Thank you for standing by. All participants will be in a listen-only mode until the question and answer portion of the presentation. During that time, if you would like to ask a question, please press star 1 and record your name when prompted. As a reminder, this call is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now, I would like to turn the call over to your host, Josh Finch. You may begin. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Josh Finch of NASA's Office of Communications. We're here to discuss NASA's SpaceX Crew-3 mission, the third crew rotation flight of a SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft on a Falcon 9 rocket to the International Space Station as a part of the agency's commercial crew program. Teams from NASA, SpaceX, and more just completed the flight readiness review for NASA's SpaceX Crew-3 mission, including Crew-2's return, and senior representatives here to talk about the mission are Catherine Leaders, Associate Administrator for Space Operations Mission Directorate at NASA Headquarters, Steve Stitch, Manager of NASA's Commercial Crew Program at Kennedy, Joel Montalbano, Manager of the International Space Station Program at NASA's Johnson Space Center, Holly Ridings, Chief Flight Director, Flight Operations Directorate at NASA's Johnson Space Center, William Gerstenmaier, Vice President of Build and Flight Reliability at SpaceX, Frank DeVena, Program Manager, International Space Station Program at ESA, and Junichi Sakai, Manager, International Space Station Program at JAXA. We'll start with opening comments from our presenters, and then we'll take questions. First, we'll start with Kathy.
So here we are once again for a Crew FOR, and it strikes me as we were sitting here getting ready for a flight readiness review, and I love the fact that we always now start our flight readiness reviews with the crew that is getting ready for launch always kicks it off for us. And so Raja, Tom, Kayla, and Matthias were all sitting there and make sure that they're representing also their crew members on orbit, that we're going to be reviewing their return readiness also at that time. So we're also thinking about Shane, Megan, Aki, and Thomas coming home and recognizing that as we sat here today, we're reviewing the culmination of what Steve Stitch said was, you know, a fraction of the ton of work that both teams had done to get us to this point today. The team went through and did the joint SpaceX and NASA and our international partners reviewed the final launch readiness for our Crew-3 mission and also return readiness for our Crew-2 missions coming up. There were a few open items that will be being worked out this week. What was amazing to me was we're continuing to learn from our vehicles and learn from the missions, and these were actually things we learned from our most recent mission off of Inspiration 4. And so we continue to be very grateful for the learning that we are getting through our flights and the fact that the teams are working so well together and communicating so well together and so are able to address the risks that are on existing vehicles. So we have one open issue on the Crew-3 for the Crew-3 launch, which is we have a final qualification that needs to be wrapped up this week on a modification we made to the waste tank area, and Mr. Gerstenmaier will be talking a little bit more about that. And we have some final structural analysis that needs to be done on the on-orbit weldment. That final coupon testing needs to be run. And both of those items will be closed out at our launch readiness review this week. So all parties were go today, obviously with understanding that we need to finish up those two open areas of test and assessment. But as folks know, the flight readiness review is one step in a final set of major steps for us to get ready for flight. And this team will take each step carefully, and we'll be flying when we're ready to fly, and returning our crew when we're ready to return the crews safely. Steve Stitch.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. Proud to be here representing the NASA and SpaceX teams. You know, as I said at the FRR, we roll up the issues and we bring them here to talk, but it's a huge testament to the teams working so hard in the middle of COVID over many, many months to get to the point where we're ready to go launch Crew-3 and also return Crew-2. As we talked about today at the FRR, we in the Commercial Crew Program have a little bit of work to do with SpaceX leading forward to flight. We did make a modification to the waste tank to remediate the problem that we saw on the Inspiration 4 vehicle, and as you said, that Inspiration 4 flight was really a gift for us. The work really has to do, the qualification is done, we just need to review that, and we'll get that done this week ahead of the launch. And then, as you said, we've got a little bit more work to do on one part of the weldment just to make sure that we're good to go for Crew-2 return. So we'll get that done. We're pressing on toward a launch time of on 10/31 on Halloween of 2:21 early in the morning Eastern time, and with that launch we would dock on November the 1st at 12:10 Eastern time. It's about a 22-hour rendezvous for that launch time. And then we have backup opportunities should we need them on November the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and various launch time for those days, so we're well set up. We'll start looking at the weather a little bit later on in the week. It's probably a little too early to speculate on the weather for Sunday's launch. You know, one of our themes is continue to learn, and we are learning a lot every time we fly. We will have on Crew-3 a new capability. In the event of a failure case, we put some software in for entry. If the flight computer were to fail, we have some software in something called a vehicle RIO that would take over and could keep the footprint safe for landing. Also on Crew-2 return, for the first time, we'll have the fly around. So we'll do a fly around of the ISS should the trajectory allow for that, and then we'll be able to photograph parts of the space station that we have not photographed before. So that's a new capability of the vehicle that we'll have on Crew-2 and Crew-3 as well. Crew-2 return, the earliest date for that would be if we launch Crew-3 on 10/31, we would go ahead and land on November the 4th. We have a number of opportunities at our 7 landing sites that we'll look at for that landing, and then we'll set up for one of those sites based on the weather should we launch on the 31st. Most of the opportunities are night. We landed at night on Crew-1, so the SpaceX and NASA teams are ready for that operation should we land at night. So it just turns out that's the way the orbital mechanics works out, and sometimes the weather is actually better at night, so personally I don't mind that at all. The vehicle is doing well. Dragon is up at Hangar 39A, and it is mated to the Falcon 9 launch vehicle. We'll roll out to the pad tomorrow, and then we'll set up for a static fire on Wednesday around 11 p.m. Eastern, and then we'll do a crew dry dress like we always do a day later on Thursday, and get ready to go fly hopefully later this week. And that's all I had. Turn it over to Joel Montalbano from the Space Station Program.
Hey, thank you, Steve. Thank you again for joining us tonight. You know, we had a good review today, and today's review, in preparation for that, we've had a number of internal reviews in our program, and I know CCP, the Commercial Crew Program, as well as SpaceX had done the same. The good news is there were no surprises today. Everybody walked in today with understanding the mission and understanding the work that needs to happen. As far as on orbit, you know, you've heard us talk a lot about dockings and undockings and relocations. You've heard all that. In addition, the Crew-2 on orbit, they will or have already completed up to 250 experiments during their expedition in utilization and research, technology demonstrations, as well as low Earth orbit commercialization activities. And, you know, we're very happy of the performance and the work that we've been able to accomplish during this expedition, and we look forward to the Crew-3 mission. The Crew-3 vehicle will stay up approximately 6 months. We'll continue with participation of our international partners on the U.S. crewed vehicles. We're excited to have that, and I know you'll hear a little more from Frank when he talks. I just want to say a huge thanks to the NASA teams, the SpaceX teams, and our international partners and everyone responsible for putting these missions together. It's a big deal, you know, what we do in preparation, what we do on orbit, the activities we accomplish, and it's impressive to watch this team operate. So with that, let me hand it over to the Chief of the Flight Director Office, Holly Readiness.
Well, thanks, Joel. It's an honor to be here today and speak to everyone. You know, it's really an exciting time to be involved in human spaceflight. I mean, there is just an amazing amount going on in the world. You know, today we're talking about, you know, our flight readiness review to being the Crew-2 crew home and the Crew-3 crew, you know, to head uphill and get to the International Space Station. You know, but when you consider that in context of everything that's going on, it's just, you know, we're really lucky to be here and have this responsibility. And so, you know, thinking about the crew, so Raja Chari, who's the commander of Crew-3, Matthias, and then Kayla, you know, will be number 599, 600, and 601 of humans in space, total space flyers. And it's really amazing. And so when Raja addressed us today, he said a couple of things. You know, one, space continues to be hard. We're going to cross the 600-person mark, and in some ways that's not a lot. But then in others, it is. They are now one of many. And so that number is getting big enough where, you know, you think about human spaceflight again as this global endeavor. And so, you know, just kind of highlighting that as we're getting to the end of our mission campaign for Crew-2, right? Part of today was to bring them home safely back to their families. They've been up there for 6 months. That's a mission campaign that started years ago, you know, with their training, living and working on orbit, doing all the great work for the space station, and then being able to come home, right? And that's a huge responsibility that we have, you know, to them and to their families. And then for Crew-2 to be starting on their mission, it also started a while ago with all of their training, and they're really excited. The third thing that Raja said today was to get up there and to do science, you know, for the space station. And they're really excited to be there. They'll do some other things as well. Spacewalks, one of their favorites. And so they've done all types of training to handle everything that needs to be done while they live up there. And so, you know, for the crew, they've been in quarantine here this last week in Houston. They'll travel to Florida, here to the Kennedy Space Center tomorrow to continue that quarantine period. Their families will arrive, you know, shortly after that. So, you know, once you get past the flight readiness review, you know, for all of us, and especially those of us that do operations, you know, that's kind of where it's game time, right? You sort of set things aside, you know, pick up your headset, walk into the control center. We'll do static fire here and get to see data off the vehicles, and so that's really exciting to see our vehicles kind of light up and become alive. And so, you know, as we make that transition, you know, we just have to continue to really be responsible and really be thoughtful. We have this great partnership with SpaceX. We've done this a couple of times now. You know, not enough to really say we're good at it. As people have mentioned, we're still learning a lot. But there is a cadence to it, and we are one team with our SpaceX partners, our friends, our colleagues, and we're really excited about it. It's an exciting time to be in human spaceflight. And so I think with that, I'll hand it to Mr. Gerstenmaier.
Thanks, Holly. Again, from my perspective today, the FRR was really thorough, and we discussed a lot of topics. I think the unique aspect is we've got to look at getting the vehicle ready to go launch Crew-3, but then we also got to look at making sure the vehicle to return our crew, Crew-2, is ready to go fly, and that handover is pretty short on orbit. So it's a pretty intense time for us at SpaceX to make sure we're ready to go launch, and then we're also ready to go retrieve a vehicle in a fairly short amount of time. So that's a lot of extra work and special things that we need to do on the SpaceX side to really get prepared, and I think we're ready for all that activity. As Kathy said, there's 2 open items we've got to work on. One is associated with Crew-3 and the waste tank redesign. We've provided all the data to NASA. NASA needs to go take a look at it, review it, make sure it's okay. And then the other one is a Crew-2 vehicle. There's some things, again, associated with the waste system that we want to double check, and there's some testing we want to get completed. We'll take that data, it'll get added to some other data, we'll put it together, and I think we'll get flight rationale out of that. So I think both of those have a good path to closure, and we'll get through those in the next couple of days. And then I want to remind us all, we still got a lot of open work in front of us. We got vehicle rollout tonight, we got static fire coming up, we got dry dress, and then obviously the weather's got to be right. So there's a lot in front of us yet to go. We need to stay attentive, keep looking, keep working together as a team, keep sharing things, and make sure we're really ready to go fly, because the most the worst thing we can do is just lose our attention and think it's easy and fall back. We got to just keep looking and making sure things are really ready to go fly. So, again, a very productive review. Again, I think we had a good discussion back and forth. It's interesting to hear NASA's perspective on topics. I think that actually makes us stronger. We get a little bit of independent check and balance. We've been working a lot of subjects on our side, a lot of reviews, but then to see how that gets picked up and how it gets understood on the other side by listening to the comments from NASA, we get a different perspective, which I think actually helps our system be better. And it's been a good time to keep moving forward. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Frank.
Thank you, Will. We were excited again as ESA to be here today for the flight readiness review. It's the second ESA astronaut now that will fly with SpaceX. We had, of course, Thomas Pesquet just 6 months ago that launched to space, that is still today on orbit. And I would like to thank the NASA and the SpaceX teams again for the very thorough review, but also for the very open discussions that we had on the status of the vehicles and the launcher. It will be an interesting mission for Matthias. We had, of course, a couple of months ago the MLM launch with on orbit of the MLM, the ERA, the European Robotic Arm, and it will be the first time that we will operate ERA on orbit, and Matthias, of course, will be integral part of that. Not only did we launch 6 months ago Thomas, 6 months from now we are looking forward to Samantha flying on Crew-4. And so that will be the first time that we will have 3 astronauts, European astronauts in a row on the ISS, 1.5 years of permanent presence of European crew on orbit. So for ESA, it's a little bit a golden age that we are in right now with the NASA USEV program, the commercial crew program. We have now 7 crew members on orbit. We have a lot of crew time to do science. And so it's the golden age indeed for space flight. And of course, we are looking forward to continue this for many more years. ESA is looking forward to work with the international partners to extend the space station till 2030 as a minimum, and so we hope that we can get resolution on this in the coming months or year, because we have our ministerial conference coming up in the November next year, and this is one of the big decisions that our ministers will have to take to provide for the programmatic context and also to provide the funding for the ISS extension. Of course, we are already looking forward to this extension because we also started a new astronaut class selection in ESA this year. More than 23,000 people from Europe participated in this selection. It's a huge success. Also in terms of diversity, it's a huge success, this new astronaut selection. So of course all those people are looking forward as well to fly to the ISS, and if they get recruited in 23, we need to extend the ISS till minimum 2030 for them to have a flight opportunity. So we are really looking forward to that. We are really looking forward to continue all the science. We have never done so much science on orbit as these years. Matthias will also have a very big science package from our partner agency, DLR, which is the German space agency. So we're really excited to go fly. And so I would like to thank again the NASA and the SpaceX teams to make this possible for Europe. Thank you.
And we'll go to Junichi Sakai.
Thank you for introducing me. First of all, on behalf of JAXA, I would like to sincerely thank the NASA leadership, SpaceX, and all members who are working so hard for the Crew-3 launch and the Crew-2 return preparation and continuing ISS operation under the tough COVID situation. As reported earlier in the FRR, we have decided to go for the Crew-3 launch and Crew-2 return. Including astronaut Hoshida Akihiko Aki is all ready for them. As a commander, Aki has led the Expedition 65-66 mission over 5 months. While there are a few Japanese ISS commanders, he became the second commander, and during his increment period, ISS has become more sustainable and attractive due to several improvements made by the EBAs and with the new MLM modules installed by the Russian carriers. On the other hand, we've seen several anomalies such as the loss of attitude control and the smoke detection, etc. At every moment, all the crew members have performed their own role surely and calmly, and collaborated along with the ground flight control team to bring the ISS back to its nominal state. During such events, it made us reaffirm ourselves that ISS is indeed a human-sustained outpost, and we've also realized the advantage of human spaceflight for future space development through this increment. On the ISS, international partners jointly collaborate and overcome various challenges every time. And I do believe that all the crew have taught us with the importance of cooperation and mutual trust, and have brought courage and hope for all of us against the great adversity we have facing on the ground. Next fall, astronaut Wakata Koichi will be on board Crew-3. This means that Japanese astronauts will be boarding the operational commercial spacecraft in 3 consecutive years. I think the environment of the LEO space utilization has drastically changed and has entered a new phase. This is brought by the close cooperation between the international partners and participants for years in the ISS, and the growing engagement by private sectors. JAXA is going to promote the expansion of LEO utilization activities, including those on the ISS. JAXA is also developing a new transport vehicle, STBX, where we believe that this new cargo vehicle will contribute to this effort as well. And lastly, I wish the successful launch of Crew-3 and the safe return of all the Crew-2 members back to the Earth. I'm looking forward to this coming launch and return, and we'll continue final preparation. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now turn to our media question and answer portion. Remember to press *1 on your phone to enter the queue. And our first question will be from Marcia Dunn at the Associated Press.
I'm going to assume yes. Bill, this question's for you. I was wondering if you could please describe what exactly went wrong with Dragon Toilet during the Inspiration 4 mission and its effect on the crew, and also talk about your efforts to resolve the problem with the Dragon on the ground and the one in orbit. Thank you.
Yeah, on Inspiration 4, there's a storage tank where the urine goes to be stored in the vehicle, and inside that storage tank, there's a tube that came unconnected or came unglued, and it allowed urine essentially to not go into the storage tank, but essentially to go into the fan system. That's what we saw in Inspiration 4. It had no impact on Inspiration 4 at all. We didn't really even notice it. The crew didn't notice it until we got back. When we got the vehicle back, we looked under the floor and we saw the fact that there was contamination underneath the floor of Inspiration 4. We then thought maybe there could be a similar type of problem on the crew vehicle on orbit, Crew-2. So we went ahead and looked on the vehicle on Crew-2, and yes, there was some indication of some contamination under the floor, and we've seen that. And then for Crew-3, we fixed this problem in the tank by essentially making it all welded structure with no longer a joint in there that can come unglued and come disconnected. So that's basically where we are. So it's no impact to us at all. I think it shows us how important it is to get the vehicle back, to go look at it. We were able to disassemble the entire Inspiration 4 vehicle, understand exactly what the problems were, get that behind us, then take that information, allow the crew on orbit to use a borescope to confirm what the problem was potentially on Crew-2, make sure that there is no concern at all for a return. Those are the actions that we're carrying forward to finish that activity up. and we'll return the crew safely, and then we fix Crew-3, so it will not be a problem for us at all on Crew-3. So again, this is a chance for us to learn.
One quick question for the vehicle on orbit. Is there any chance of corrosion, or, you know, if the urine was just pooling there all these months, I'm just wondering how that might have impacted the structure.
Yeah, the concern would be potentially corrosion caused by a compound we put in the urine to remove the ammonia called oxone. We did extensive tests where we took aluminum samples and we placed oxone urine mixture on them, and then we put them in a chamber that mimics the humidity and temperature conditions on board space station, and we looked at the corrosion growth over an extended period of time, and we see that corrosion growth limits itself in the low humidity environment on board station, and the corrosion level is understood on the Crew-2 capsule. Also on Crew-2, the vehicle was used less. It was only used during ascent, where in the case of Inspiration-4, it was used for the full 4 or 3 days of the mission. And so both fans were operated on Crew-4, so there was a little more extensive contamination on Inspiration-4 than there is on Crew-2. So we understand that essentially Inspiration-4 is a bounding case in some sense for us for this moving forward. But we don't have. We've done all the analysis, we've done the physical testing, we've done sample testing of the aluminum, and luckily we chose, or on purpose, we choose an aluminum alloy that is very insensitive to corrosion, so we're in pretty good shape from an overall perspective. So again, we'll double check things, we'll triple check some things, we got a couple more samples we'll pull out of the chambers and inspect, but we'll be ready to go and make sure the crew is safe to return.
Thanks a lot.
Our next question is from Chris Davenport at the Washington Post.
Oh, hey, thanks, everyone. I guess this is for Kathy or Gerst or Steve. Given that this is your third operational mission and fourth crewed mission with SpaceX, I wonder if you could just share any examples of how you're, trying to guard against complacency and really stay sharp. I mean, any discussion at FRR or memos that are being distributed, just looking for something that shows how you urge each other to stay focused and create that culture of safety that you always talk about. Thanks.
I'll take it, and then Kathy or Bill can jump in. I think what we've tried to do is create this culture of learning, essentially, from every flight. And as Bill talked about with Inspiration-4, we've learned a lot from that flight already. We talked about looking at the parachutes from that flight. NASA, in partnership with SpaceX, we imaged the parachutes as they were deployed during landing, both the drogues and the mains. We recovered them. We look at them together. That's just one example of the kind of thing that we do. We did learn on that flight that there was a little abrasion item on the drogue parachutes that moved up a little bit. So we saw that happen. We inspected it post-flight. We learned that there's some stitching that could be enhanced. We went on the vehicle on Crew-3. The technician went in and stitched this up and added some protection there, and NASA watched that. So that's just one example of the kind of things that we're trying to do. We review all the data from the flights across all the systems and look at it, and what we're looking for is tiny clues or tiny imperfections, and somebody might look at a plot and wonder why did that temperature go up here or this pressure change here. And so you really just try to dig into all those sorts of things and try to understand those and then improve things and fly safely. That's the culture that I think SpaceX has in terms of a learning culture, an engineering culture, a test culture that NASA has also had in the past, and we embrace. Same thing on our side. We have engineers that dig into problems and look at the systems and make sure that we can continue to fly safely.
I mean, Gerst talked about this at the beginning, right? He said, hey, it's through this partnership and that we're both having this healthy debate that helps create the culture, right? So it's us working together and coming in with different viewpoints, I think, also really helps us going forward. Benji shared a note that is sent out to every single SpaceX team member as they're heading into the final flight that says, hey, all of you out there, I love the fact that they call it paranoia reviews. All of you out there, think about this. We got to keep, and it has pictures of the crew on it and says, we got to really be going and thinking about everything out there and get yourself ready. And it's probably something we need to be thinking about too, but I really feel like it's this partnership and the fact that we come and look at problems, and not just a partnership with SpaceX and NASA, but a partnership with our international partners too, right? And so it's with all of us here kind of having these debates. I feel like, you know, we're really creating this culture of
I think there's also a tremendous advantage when we get the hardware back to take a look at it. The fact that we got Inspiration 4 back, and then we could disassemble essentially the floor and then take a look and actually understand where the corrosion occurred on that vehicle, that gave us tremendous insight into what we needed to look for on Crew-2 on orbit, so that was important. And then every time we fly a Falcon and we get a Falcon back, we get a chance to go look at that data, and I think that actually helps make us safer. You know, as we're starting to fly some 11th flight boosters, they have a lot of flight time on them. Those are kind of paving the way, and we can start to see which systems maybe are a little weaker than other systems, and then we can go make changes and actually improve those. So by continuing to look at the hardware, look at the systems we get back, and continuing to fly, we can continue to keep learning and keep challenging each other to get better. Like in the case of this tube that we found that wasn't glued properly, we didn't stop there. We said, what other interfaces on this vehicle could have a similar glued interface that might be a problem? So we went back and we looked at other areas on the vehicle and reviewed all of the designs and all the qualifications for each and every one of those components beyond the life support system to make sure that we didn't have another similar problem like that glued joint. So that's the thing we challenge ourselves is don't just focus on the immediate problem or just fix that problem. Look beyond that problem and how could there be an underlying root cause or a fundamental issue that has broader implications that can help us all fly safe. So that's one way of challenging each other to stay hungry, stay paranoid, my words are stay hungry, to keep looking for new things or stay curious, and don't ever assume you know what's going to happen with the vehicle.
As a reminder to enter the question queue, please press star 1 on your phone. And our next question is from Mike Wall at space.com.
Thank you for actually doing this. Appreciate it. Just to clarify, Gerst is the only open issue. It's a related issue for both Crew-2 and for Crew-3. And is there any more work that needs to be done on the Crew-2 item by the astronauts in orbit, or is all of the work that remains on that item to be done on the ground with sort of data analysis and so forth?
Yeah, all the data needs to be done on the ground. So there's some test samples we want to get, and then we need to look at those test samples and see what the data tells us. And I don't think it really changes our flight rationale. The flight rationale we have is strong, but then it will allow us to determine which pieces of that flight rationale are more important than other pieces of the flight rationale. So I think that'll help us get informed. And then the other one is on Crew-3, we made this design change where we go to this all-welded design. We provided all that data to NASA, and NASA needs to go review that and make sure that they're comfortable with that.
What I thought was very profound today was Joel Montalbano said in the review, as you're going through it, he said, you know, station's in a very stable condition, you know, and we are able to do anything else on orbit to get us going or be able to do any more work on the ground. And so we carefully sat here and said, is there anything else we need the crew on orbit to do to make sure? And there wasn't. And is there anything, and do we have the right set of work to do? But I thought that was just a great thing that Joel did, that he just kind of put it out there and make sure that, you know, there's no urgency here. Vehicle's stable, the team's stable, and we're working through it, even though, you know, we obviously all want to go fly, but just a great comment.
And our next question is from David Curley at the Discovery Channel.
Thank you very much. Steve Pitts or Gerst, can you explain this new software for reentry? Why was it developed? Is it just redundant? When would it be activated? In what circumstances? Can you just give us a little depth on that?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. What we basically did is put some software in a vehicle RIO flight computer essentially that would assist the main computer. So what we have is, if for some reason the main computer, there's 3 computers that run the entry software in parallel at the same time. And if something were to happen and all 3 of those were to go down, then there's another flight computer that would take over and essentially hold the roll in the alpha, the angle of attack on the roll command, and allow the vehicle to land safely. It's just a precaution. If you remember, the space shuttle had essentially a backup flight software system, and it was there in the event of some kind of common cause failure mode on the prime system. This is akin to that in the space shuttle, and I'll see if Kirst has anything to add.
No, I would say in the case where all 3 computers fail, it lets the landing accuracy remain the same by essentially a 4th computer device that will go ahead and keep the accuracy of the landing. So it improves the accuracy of the landing, and which results in more crew safety.
Quadruple protection?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And as a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please press star 1 on your phone. Our next question goes to Ken Kramer at Space Up Close.
Hey, thank you for doing this, and good luck, and hopefully it goes. My question is for Frank Davina. You talked about the ISS extension. I'd like to know, what is it that ESA needs to do, technically, I guess, to approve this? In addition to ministers approving money, what do you need to do on the ISS to prove that it can, to your satisfaction, that it can be extended? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Ken. So on the ESA side, of course, we need to qualify our Columbus module that it's good to go till 2030. Technically, initially, the module was qualified for 10 years on orbit, and so we have to do some work for that. Fortunately for us, that work has already been performed in the last years because Columbus launched in 2008, if I'm correct, yes. 2008, so we had already to do some work to extend it beyond the 10 years, and so we took this immediately to the 2030 time frame. So we are good to go from a technical side. I think our partners are also working through the assessment of the technical work to go through 28 or 2030 or even longer. So that's some technical work that needs to be done, and then of course we need to agree. I think in every country, every system is a little bit different. They need to get everybody needs to get approval from their respective governments, and this is what we are working on right now. And our approval politically has already been taken in the ministerial conference in 2019, because there is where the member states allowed us to do a new astronaut selection. And of course, you're not going to select new astronauts if you do not have a place to fly to. They also approved at that moment the modernization of our Columbus module. This is something else that we are doing. This is not required for the extension itself, but of course we do more and more science. The IT systems in Columbus were designed in the late 90s, and IT has changed a little bit in the last 20 years, as everybody can imagine. So we are all also in ESA already busy with a modernization program, both for the ground segment and for the on-orbit segment. And that's to enable us to do even more science as we do now on the Columbus module, also to allow more commercialization of our Columbus module, and also to allow scientists to have direct access to their experiments on orbit. So that is already all in place, and now we need to have, of course, in the next ministerial conference in 2022, we need to have the further programmatic decisions taken, and we need to have, of course, the funding associated to extend the space station till 2030.
Good, thank you.
And that was our final media question, so I'll turn it back over to Kathy Lueders for final comments.
So thanks again for participating today. Today was another great example of teamwork. Teamwork between programs, the Commercial Crew Program and the ISS program. I'm very proud of the team there. Teamwork between our industry partners, SpaceX and NASA. Teamwork with our international partners. I've appreciated ESA, JAXA, OSCE, Roscosmos. We're all here as a team getting ready to go fly. This teamwork is important for us to continue to fly safely, and we will do it, like Gerst said before, we'll do it one step at a time. This was one of the final steps, but obviously we've got to get through rollout, we've got to get through static fire, we've got to get through our launch readiness review, dry dress, and those are all important steps towards us working towards a October 31st launch. My daughter's birthday's on October 31st, and I think she would be pretty happy to have a Crew-3 launch that day as a birthday present. So that would be a nice candle for her. Frank said it would be a nice candle. So thanks for participating today. More to come.
And that's going to wrap things up for us here. NASA's SpaceX Crew-3 mission is targeting a launch to the International Space Station at 2:21 a.m. Eastern, Sunday, October 31st from Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. We'll begin live NASA SpaceX mission coverage at 10 p.m. Saturday, October 30th, and continue the broadcast through docking, hatch opening, and the welcome ceremony on November 1st. Our next event for this mission is tomorrow, Tuesday, October 26th. You can join us on NASA television, the NASA app, and the NASA website about 1:30 p.m. Eastern when the crew arrives to Kennedy Space Center. We'll have more on this important mission, so follow us on the Commercial Crew blog at nasa.gov/commercial crew. Have a good evening.
Thank you for your participation. This concludes today's conference. You may disconnect at this time. Thank you.